If you're in the state of California and you're 18 to 20 years old and you're curious about what a good option for personal protection or home defense would be, let's talk about that today. Because there are some limitations as far as what the law is concerned on a federal and a state level, and there are some options out there that may or may not be better than the others. And we'll talk about that today. So, federally, in any state, you cannot, as an 18 to 20 year old, buy a handgun or an other. You can only buy rifles or shotguns. Specifically, the feds say as an 18 to 20 year old, you can buy rifles and you can buy shotguns. California, unfortunately, goes one step further and says that you cannot buy semi-auto center fire rifles. So, an AR-15, an AK, a Ruger PC-9, a Mini 14, any semi-auto center fire in the state of California, as an 18 to 20 year old, you can't buy that. Now, there are some exceptions, and we will get into that. So in order to buy a gun to begin with as an 18 to 20 year old, you're gonna have to get a hunting license first. Once you get that hunting license, you can buy any shotgun. Any shotgun that you can legally own in the state of California, an 18 to 20 year old can buy. You can also buy rifles of any type that aren't semi-auto center fire, meaning you can get a bolt action, lever action, pump action, single shot, whatever it is. If it is not semi-auto and it is not center fire, you can get it in the state of California. You can also get rim fire rifles. So that gives you shotguns of any type, center fires that are not semi-auto, and any rim fire gun in the state of California. So you have a good amount of options. However, if we're specifically thinking self-defense, personal protection, you're fairly limited. There are going to be some that I would consider superior or better, and then there's some that they're still pretty good, but I would maybe consider going with some of the first options. Before we really get into the topic of what guns I would recommend, I'm going to talk about a quick exemption. If you live in the state of California and you have a parent or a grandparent that wants to give you either a handgun or a rifle that is semi-auto center fire, they can do that as long as it is a legitimate gift. You cannot pay them, you cannot give them any sort of payment, currency, refunds, or whatever. But they can give you a legitimate gift of a gun that you would not normally be able to buy, like a handgun or a semi-auto centerfire rifle. You can then fill out what's called an intrafamilial transfer form. I've made a video specifically on how to do that, and if you are curious, go ahead and watch that video on intrafamilial transfers, and that'll get you going. But you're 18 to 20 and you want to know, what do I actually buy? What kind of guns can I go out that would be suitable for home defense? Well, while anything that is a gun will put holes in people, there are options that I would consider vastly superior. First and foremost, in my mind, probably the best option would have to be a pump action shotgun. You can also go semi-auto, but personally I'm a fan of pump action shotguns for personal protection simply because semi-auto shotguns can be finicky, and while yes, many of them are very, very good, I would still personally recommend a pump action. These are fairly inexpensive. You can get a Maverick 88 for about 200 bucks. You can get a Mossberg 500 for anywhere from 350 to 500 depending on the models. You can even get them fed from magazines. Personally, I would recommend something like a Mossberg 500 that is tube fed with a 7 or 8 shot capacity, a Mossberg 590, a Maverick 88, a Remington 870 police model. I'm not a fan of the express models for the Remington 870s just because I've seen some shoddy quality control and maybe subpar finishes on them. But a Remington 870 police Magnum, a Remington 5 or a Mossberg 500 or a Mossberg 590 or the Maverick 88 are all very easy options. Basically what it boils down to is pump action shotgun with about an 18-inch barrel, tube that goes to the end of it giving you around 7 or 8 shots of capacity, and pump action. Now when you think about this, shotguns inherently have some drawbacks as far as overpenetration that can be mitigated with shooting something like number 4 buck. I know some people say, oh, it's not as good, but there's plenty of loads out there when it comes to shotguns. Do your research, figure out what kind of loading you want to go with. Do not load it with birdshot. But anywhere from double-aught buck to number 4 buck, somewhere in there, you can get a pretty damn good option for personal protection. Outside of the pump action shotgun realm, you're fairly limited. I would not personally recommend any rimfire firearm for self-defense. At the end of the day, putting holes in someone is still putting holes in someone, but I would prefer to have a more powerful firearm, and a 22 Magnum, a 17 HMR, they're more varmint rounds, and while yes, they can kill people, I couldn't in good conscience recommend something like that unless you had no other physical capabilities, as in you could not handle a shotgun, you could not handle a normal rifle, and that's the only thing that you can really work with. If that's your case, get good with it, get good at clearing malfunctions, get good .22 ammo, and keep that gun clean and well maintained. But an actual recommendation other than a shotgun that I would personally recommend would be something like a bolt-action rifle that takes AR-15 magazines. The reason being is, in a bolt-action rifle, you could use standard capacity magazines, assuming you acquired them legally. And if you want to know more about that, I've got a video that'll help you down below. When it comes to capacity, I think having the ability to put more rounds downrange is always better than less. You can get something like a Mossberg MVP or any other bolt-action AR. This is just my one example that I know of. A bolt-action rifle that takes AR-15 magazines, or any magazines that you can get easily in a 10-round capacity, or if you already own them, higher capacity. It just so happens that I know the Mossberg MVP is a fairly reliable gun that takes AR magazines, meaning that if you had a 30-round mag or you had a 60-round mag, probably a 30 more realistically, you could continue to shoot, have higher capacity. You can get fairly fast at cycling the bolt. The only downside is obviously it's a bolt action and not a semi-auto. So you can also get things like lever actions, but personally, if I really had to say what my one recommendation would be, it would be get a pump action shotgun, get good at loading it, get good at cycling it, get good at shooting that gun, take it out, get it patterned, figure out what ammo you want to shoot with it. Personally, I'd recommend something between double-aught buck and number 4 buck. Double-aught buck has more power, but it also has more over-penetration, so that's a concern depending on your living situation. Number 4 buck obviously has less power because it's smaller pellets, there's more of them, and it potentially penetrates through less. So that could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. Just, you have to make that personal decision for yourself. I recommend looking at some of the Lucky Gunner videos if you want to know more about ballistics, because they have a lot of excellent presentations talking about ballistic performance. I hope that this video was helpful and informative to you. If you have any personal recommendations that you might want to talk about, feel free to drop a comment below. If you have any questions saying, hey, would this be a good option? I'd love to have that discussion with you. Maybe some other people can chime in. As always, have fun, be safe, stay dangerous. Peace.